always been fascinated with flight. Got into remote control airplanes and stuff like that, but have always wanted to learn to fly. I've went up in a Cessna and I've went up in helicopters and had flights like in C-131s in the Army, things like that. But as far as personal flight, yeah, this is my only type of flight I've ever been able to do.
I've been always interested in flying. I didn't know what the best option was. I looked into ultralights, airplanes, found some YouTube videos, and it looked great, paramotoring, so that's how I ended up here. Dave was the closest, and everyone I spoke to highly recommended Midwest, and I can see why.
I don't really have any background in aviation, and I first found out about PPG about 2 years ago. I met Dave at one of the fly-ins, and he was nice enough to give me a wing and show me a little bit of kiting. But I wasn't really ready to commit. I didn't have the time or the resources, but I never forgot about it. And so 2 years down the line, I called Dave and Matt at Midwest PPG, and I think it was March, and I was surprised to hear that they were already pretty much fully booked for the summer, but luckily they had a few openings and were able to squeeze me in here at the end. So I've been looking forward to it all summer, and have been really, really impressed so far.
I've been flying powered parachutes for 10 to 11 years. Prior to that, not really anything. I was starting to take sport pilot training, and I went up in a Cessna a couple times, and I did enjoy it, but the serious factor of it seemed like it was a little too high for the view that you got, and wasn't that real feel of flight that I was looking for. So I just kind of wanted something a little bit more sporty, a little more intimate, really. A little less machine, a little more just you in the sky. So that's where I got into PPG, and it's just been awesome.
We really just started 5 or 6 days ago. Started with kiting the wing, and then classroom stuff, learning anything about safety and technique. And then by night 2, we were flying.
We got in the air that night for our first flights, which was pretty amazing to me.
By that night, we had all done our first launch and landing, so that was awesome.
You know, it was a little scary at first, but we did some classes beforehand, so I knew what to expect. And once you start flying, it was surprisingly easy once you had somebody there talking to you, telling you exactly what to do and when to do it.
Dave and Matt are speaking to us throughout the entire process over radios, so we are hearing them in our headsets, and they're speaking to us on the ground. But we do our first flight solo, and there was sure a little bit of anxiety going into it, but we were able to practice everything we needed to before we actually got up in the air, and so I felt very safe throughout the whole process. Couple of days, it's just been a slow progression of honing skills and practicing various techniques.
We practice kiting, do classrooms, so we'll do a class for an hour and then get the kite, and then in the evenings, it's the best part, go out 2 hours before sunset and get some flights in.
More and more launches and landings, just really dial everything in. The instructors have been awesome. They've been very, very friendly and more like a buddy than like a teacher, but really very, very knowledgeable, and honestly a lot more knowledge than I expected to get, which was fantastic because I feel like I'm going away with a lot more aviation experience than you even need for the sport, but it's all very helpful information.
Dave and Matt seem to have a wealth of experience and knowledge. They've been very, very easy to talk to, and the instruction that they've given, I think, has been very clear and concise. It's very easy to understand. There's feedback at all points throughout the training process.
The instructors have been great. Matt and Dave, very efficient is the word I would use. They don't waste time or words. Every time you have a question, they're about to answer it. I've been very impressed with them, and especially on the radio, they're right there when you need them. Really helps give you confidence to go up and to land and keep going.
You learn a lot really quick. They teach you things you just weren't expecting to be within the the flight realm.
The airspace training is definitely very helpful. That's some stuff that's really tricky to learn. It's really nice to be able to do a lot of examples and back and forth communications, stuff like that.
From them guiding us while we're actually there doing it, to them reviewing videos of us taking off and landing and pointing out what we did well and what we didn't do well, I felt was extremely helpful in kind of honing our skills initially.
And a good instruction for how to maintain the motor safely and all the things to look out for and the different checklists you need to go through so you can make sure everything's perfect before you take off, before every flight, and just really all the stuff that you need to keep yourself really safe in flight.
It was definitely more difficult than I expected. It's more intense, there's a lot to learn. It's just a little more to it than I expected at first, but that goes back to, that's why you're in training. I would have never made it without the training. So yes, it's difficult, but with good instructors like Matt and Dave, it definitely shortens the learning curve. What would have taken me a year, I feel like, on my own, I've done in a week.
The takeoffs, the kiting, the glider is definitely the most challenging part. I thought it would be landing, and because I worry about my knees, but the landing's like really super easy.
It's a little more tricky definitely on takeoff than I had probably anticipated. But once you get the hang of it, it's really just making sure you've got everything set up correctly, your directions are right, and check your wing, check your wind. The landing is definitely a lot easier than I expected it to be. It's really the trickiest part, just to really getting your takeoff nailed. Once you're up there in the air, the wing handles pretty much like you expect it to. It's definitely really confident building once you take off a few times just to get that takeoff just dialed. I would definitely say get your training for sure. There's just so much going on when you're first about to take off. It just would be so terrifying to try to do it by yourself, and chances are you're gonna face plant or land on your back, one of the two. And the cost of equipment is just too expensive to have something like that happen. Definitely just find a place, preferably here because the people are awesome, and just get training. It's just a fantastic experience through and through, so you really can't beat it.
Yeah, absolutely. I would recommend training for anybody. There's so many variables in this that you wouldn't think about if you didn't have training or someone telling you about, that like midday flight, I would have thought, hey, as long as it's calm, midday would be great. But there's a lot of stuff going on in the atmosphere that we don't realize. And until I had that weather class, I really didn't, would have never thought about some of those things. But it can be very dangerous during midday flight.
Aside from the obvious safety factor, just being able to try out a bunch of different gear firsthand. You might buy a beginner glider, which is going to cost more than the training costs anyways, and you might come here and a week later you realize you're already outflown that glider, so you're going to want to try a few different ones so you can buy exactly what's right for you. That's definitely a huge point for me.
I think it's extremely helpful that we're training with other people, not just so that we can kind of talk about our experiences together and reflect on what we're doing well and what we're not doing well, but also just to kind of grow into the sport with other people, because as Matt and Dave have told us, and I'm starting to see, it's a lot more fun when you have others that you're flying with, and easy, and I think you're able to grow and progress your skills that much easier having other people to bounce ideas off and to see their techniques.
I really enjoy training with different people. That way you're kind of all starting on the same basis, so you really have something to relate to. Plus, if you do something wrong, you don't feel so bad because somebody else is doing something wrong too. And it's just been awesome to be able to learn together and help each other out and grow through other people's mistakes so you can try to figure out what to do and what not to do.
You really feel like you accomplished something when you have a smooth landing and your buddy saw you do it. It's just kind of rooting for the other person. You all want to see each other succeed. That really helps you get up there and just keep going.
You see them in flight, you're talking to them either over the radio or when you get back down, and seeing what your friends are doing and just having that experience together is really, really cool. And these guys, I didn't know any of the guys I'm training with beforehand, but in a matter of 4 or 5 days, we've kind of created a pretty strong bond, and I certainly hope that we'll stay in contact after the training is over.
It definitely makes it a lot better. Plus, we've all just become like great friends, so that's really cool. And flying all together is just awesome. It's just that success that you're looking for. Once you're finally up and everybody's just mingling together, it's just super awesome.
I'm pretty much taking off and landing without instruction. We're still on radio, but I'm not really getting much input from the instructors unless needed. So yeah, now it's just a matter of practice, practice, practice.
Well, the last flight I just got done doing, which was probably about 30 minutes, really was confidence building as far as getting the feel for the wing and just getting more comfortable in the air and maneuvering around and really just feeling the response of everything and knowing how stuff reacts and ways to correct the different changes in direction and stuff like that. It's pretty much progressed. Every single time I take off, I'm more and more confident each time with the next launch, which is fantastic, and the same with the landings.
The last flight we did was our first extended flight. We didn't go too far. I think we went about a mile from the airport or the runway. It was amazing seeing other people in flight, you know, practicing getting low, not too low, of course. We're still beginners here, but yeah, just slowly but surely kind of building upon these skill sets that we're being taught here. And you know, it all seems like very easy, because I think we're in day 4 or 5 now. I didn't expect to be flying until about this time, but we were flying day 2. So I'm just excited to continue to practice and see where it takes me.
Flying means to me that you can go look at things from a different perspective that most people ever see. You can't even describe it, you know, and you just had to be there, that type of thing.
Flying low and banking hard, man. It's the main thing I'm in it for, is just that free feeling, just carving hard back and forth, you know, getting low, buzzing around trees, stuff like that.
I've got 9 or 10 flights now. It's been great. The last flight was by far the best. It gets better every flight.
Well, I think Matt and Dave started out the week by telling us that it's, you know, one of the best experiences, the best feelings you can have, and that's kind of what I suspected going into it. But you know, like I said, I have no aviation experience, so you know, when I first got up in the sky, and still now, I mean, I'm grinning ear to ear. We just got done with our first 30-minute semi-cross-country flight, and it was incredible. So yeah, it's just very rewarding, very freeing, very cool.
The flying has just been fantastic. That's what brought me here to begin with, just for the love of flight, and the training's been awesome. But honestly, once you take off and you first glide into the sky, there's just nothing better. You can't beat it.
Most awesome thing I've ever done. I'm loving it.
Just a life-changing experience all around. It's just gonna go home with a different view of how I can explore the world.